So I've been involved with water polo for most of my life, both as a player and a coach. And I've always been a little bit disappointed with the amount of media coverage it gets. If you go online, there's not a lot of information you can find on it, either about the history or just trying to find forums for rules and things like that. And water polo is one of the fastest growing sports in the United States, especially in California. USA Water Polo, which is the membership you need to have in order to participate in club sports, says that between 2011 and 2016, the memberships increased by 25%, and that's in all of the United States and a lot of other states outside of California, like Texas and Connecticut, have started to show an increase in popularity with water polo. So I feel that if people gained more information on the sport, it could further increase its popularity and overall make it more accessible to everyone. So today, I'm going to describe to you the sport of water polo by giving a brief history of the sport and relating some of its key aspects. So when most people hear water polo for the first time, they assume it looks something like this. This isn't how water polo looks today. The only thing that actually came from this is the name, and nothing else really came from this besides the fact that they're using a ball in the water. So the Encyclopedia Britannica claims that water polo began as a rugby-like sport, where players would hold a deflated bladder and try to carry it across a lake or a river, or the very small pools that they had at the time, and try to place the ball with two hands onto the deck. Oh. Don't look at those yet. Rules for the game weren't established until 1877 in Scotland, but according to FINA, the Fédération Internationale de Natation, or in English, the International Federation of Swimming, the modern sport first started to take shape in 1908. And it looked a little bit more like this, which is something that's more similar to what you see nowadays. This is where goalposts started to be implemented. People now were not allowed to walk on the bottom, they had to tread, and you could only use one hand. So in 1908, the rules developed in Scotland became mandatory for all players, and this was the first time that it was acknowledged as an Olympic sport, even though not many other countries played it. And once these rules were developed, the more soccer-like game developed over the rugby form that had been played earlier in Britain and the United States. So since then, not much has changed apart from refining some of the rules and equipment used in water polo. And now it looks a little bit more like this. So basically the same layout, but now we have clean pools without, leeches, and better balls and goals. So now that I've discussed some of the history, I want to talk about different parts of the sport. So as you can see, water polo consists of both field players and a goalie. The goalie is in many ways similar to a goalie in soccer. They're one of the main communicators on the defense. They are responsible for blocking shots. Like soccer, there is an area right here that you can't go into unless you have a ball. And their main job besides defending the goal is communicating to the defense because they have the best view of the entire pool. And now directly in front of the goalie, right here, will be the hole set. Now, he has a different name, but basically the hole set is the same as a center in basketball. They're usually the largest and most physical players on the team, and they're responsible for a lot of the goals. Since they're so close to the net, it's a lot easier to score from there. And usually they don't do a lot of shots from outside. It's a lot of quicker shots, so they're not using their whole arm for a shot. They're just doing little tip-ins or redirect shots from other players. Now, the 4 players on the outside are called the flats and the wings. They operate as just players who run drives, do some of the ball handling. They're in charge of a lot of the passing. And the last position, which is one of the most important, is the point guard. Now, unlike other sports, the point guard is responsible for guarding the whole set, who is the biggest player on the team. So it's not like in basketball where the point guard goes down against the same size defender. They have to take the largest player, and they're not as important with ball handling. It's more like the goalie, defensive communication, and also on offense, helping to communicate what's going on the field. So apart from the players, the ball is now has where it originally started with like a pig's stomach ball, now is nylon filled, and it's not as absorbent. Both teams have either dark caps or light caps, the same way most sports have jerseys, and there are 6 players in the field with 2 goalies at all times. So a total of 14 players in the water all at once. So now that I've given you guys some information on water polo, I hope that it is a little more easy for you guys to understand. If you guys hear about it in the news or with the upcoming Olympics, hope that you guys will be able to pay attention and know what's actually going on. It's been something that's important to me throughout my whole life, so I hope to see it grow in the future. Thank you.
So, Nikki, what did you think?
It was very interesting. I did not know a lot about water polo. I honestly didn't know how it originated, so it was pretty cool to find out. I do think you were a little bit nervous when you started, but I know it's okay, because like almost everyone is. But as you started going through your speech, you started to open up more, you started to get less nervous, and overall, I thought it was very
Okay. The personal story at the beginning, I think, is fine. You do a good job justifying the subject. You've got some nice information there about how water polo is growing and how the organization is expanding. I like that. You've got a clear statement of your purpose at the beginning of the presentation. There's a very basic preview. It's only two sections that you're talking about. I think you might have gotten into a third section where you're describing a little bit more of the game. That might have made sense to have that as a third section. I did note also that it seemed a little bit odd that I was getting some of that information kind of at the end of the speech. How many players are in the pool at any given time, for instance? That's like almost the last thing that you tell us instead of the first thing that you tell us. So it felt a little bit backwards when you were doing that. I heard early on some source citation about the history of material. Once you got to that second point, I didn't really hear any sources being provided. It sounds like it's mostly based on your experience. I imagine that there are people who have written about this a little bit more, and maybe they could give you some additional examples. The Olympic history, for instance, I think is one of those things that probably could be elaborated on a little bit more, particularly since you mentioned at the end, it's, well, who are the dominant teams in Olympics, for instance? Has the United States won? That sort of thing. It would be, I think that'd be something that people would be kind of interested in, and that would add a little bit of flash to your presentation, so it's not all just kind of technical description stuff. I like the images that you had. They were straightforward to show us kind of a humorous introduction to the game, and that they actually did do something like that. Was that, yeah, that's kind of funny. And then the earliest version with the primitive goal posts, I think everybody kind of appreciates how, and you're playing in basically what's a lake, that kind of thing, so that's a little bit different. And then you've got that nice clean image at the end. That's at one of those places, for instance, where you might have been able to isolate some of the players and the sections a little bit more on maybe one more slide that's just a diagram instead of the picture. Then that might have solved a couple of problems that you had when you were making, I don't want to say problems, it would have aided some of the explanations that you had in that second point a little bit more. The presentation, I think, is generally fine. I think another rehearsal or two would smooth things out. You seem to know what it is you're talking about, but you do look at the notes a little bit more than you probably want to. I'd agree that I think you got better as you went along, but there were some spots where your pacing changed, and it was like you were doing fine, and then suddenly everything feels like you've slowed down again, or you're back to sort of reading, and then it picks up again. And if you could keep the energy level up and consistent for delivery purposes, that would be a good thing. All right, thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Did you want us to?
I don't need the time. I've got it written.